The envelope slid across the mahogany table with a sound that changed everything. Inside was a check for $500,000. And Richard Hastings was smiling like he had just solved all his problems with one signature. What he didn't know was that the man sitting across from him, the one he was trying to buy off like some gold-digging nobody, had been holding this family together far longer than any of them realized. My name is Nathan Cross. And this is the story of the night my wife's family tried to erase me, without realizing I was the only person who had been quietly holding them together. No one spoke for a second. Emma sat beside me, completely still. Her parents' dining room was spotless, staged, almost theatrical, crystal glasses, perfect lighting. A table set like a negotiation instead of a meal. I opened the envelope slowly. $500,000 neatly printed, already signed. For the annulment, Victoria said gently, like she was offering a favor. It's generous, clean. Everyone can move forward with dignity. Emma's chair scraped softly against the floor. You're paying him to leave me? Richard didn't answer her. He kept his eyes on me. You're a practical man, Nathan, he said. You understand when something isn't sustainable. This helps everyone, helps everyone. I studied the check for a moment longer than necessary. Not because of the amount. Because of the certainty behind it. The belief that this would work. That I would take it. That this was my price. I placed the check back down in the center of the table. Carefully.flat.com. That's a lot of money, I said. Richard leaned back slightly, relief flickering across his face. I'm glad you see reason. Emma looked at me like she couldn't breathe. Nathan, I didn't look at her yet. Instead, I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. Richard frowned. What are you doing? Making sure I respond properly, I said. I stood and stepped a few feet away, dialing a number from memory. The line picked up almost immediately. Yes, I said quietly. I'm at dinner. It's happening now. A pause. No, not yet, I added. Just stay ready. I ended the call and returned to the table. Richard's confidence had shifted. Just slightly, enough to notice. I slid the check back toward him. You're offering me $500,000, I said calmly. To disappear from your daughter's life? Yes, he replied. I nodded once. Then I met his eyes. All right, I said. Before I give you an answer, there's something you should probably understand. Emma stared at me. Richard stopped smiling, because for the first time since that envelope touched the table, he realized this conversation wasn't ending the way he planned, and he still had no idea how much of his world had been resting quietly in my hands. A $500,000 check sits between us. Emma's parents think they're buying me out of their daughter's life. They have no idea what they've actually started. Richard waited. He didn't ask what I meant. Men like him don't ask questions unless they're sure of the answers. Emma finally broke the silence. Nathan, what's going on? I kept my eyes on Richard. You're offering me $500,000, I said evenly. To make your daughter's marriage disappear, cleanly, quietly, efficiently. That's correct, he replied. Victoria nodded, relieved we were being civilized about this. It's the best outcome for everyone involved. Everyone involved. I leaned back in my chair, letting the moment stretch just long enough to make them uncomfortable. Not angry, just uncertain, I said. I always wondered how this conversation would happen. Emma turned to me. What conversation? I gave a small shrug. The one where your parents decide what I'm worth. Richard's jaw tightened. This isn't about worth, it's about compatibility. Of course, I said structural incompatibility, you mentioned that. He didn't like being quoted back to himself. Victoria reached for her wine glass but didn't drink. Nathan, we're trying to be kind. Kind, I nodded slowly, then reached for the check again. I held it between my fingers, studying the ink, the signature, the neat confidence of it all. You've already signed it, I said. You were certain I'd take it. Richard didn't deny it. He just watched me. I assumed you'd be practical, he said. Most people are. Emma's voice shook. Stop talking about him like he's not here. I'm being practical, I said quietly. That got Richard's attention. I placed the check back down, but I didn't push it away this time. I left it exactly where it was, like a centerpiece. Let's talk terms, I said. Emma stared at me, hurt flashing across her face. Richard leaned forward, cautious now. What terms, he asked. If I were the man you think I am, I said, this would be a negotiation. So let's pretend for a moment that I'm exactly that man. The one you've always believed I was. A pause. All right, Richard said carefully. What do you want? Emma turned to me fully. Nathan, don't do this. I finally looked at her. My voice softened just slightly. I'm not doing what you think. Then I looked back at her father. You're offering $500,000, I said. In exchange for me walking away quietly. No legal complications. No public mess. Correct, yes. And you believe that solves your problem? Yes, I nodded again, slow. Thoughtful. Then I asked the question that shifted the room. Richard, if I told you this wasn't a money problem, would you still think this was the right solution? He frowned. Everything is a money problem eventually. That answer told me everything. I picked up my phone again, not dialing yet. Just holding it. Emma watched my hand. Who did you call earlier? Someone who helps me clean up complicated situations, I said. Richard's confidence cracked just a little more. What complicated situation? I met his eyes. This one. Silence. You could feel Emma's heartbeat in the room. You could feel Victoria trying to understand what she'd missed. And for the first time since the envelope slid across the table, Richard looked unsure. Not scared, not yet. Just unsure. I'm going to ask you something, I said calmly. And I want an honest answer. He didn't speak. If I take this check, I continued, you believe tonight ends your problem. You believe everything goes back to normal. You believe your company, your reputation, your family, all stay exactly as they are. Yes, he said slowly. That's the idea. I nodded once. Then I set my phone face down on the table between us. All right, I said. Then before I decide, you deserve to know what changes if I don't take it. Emma inhaled sharply. Victoria went completely still. Richard stared at me, trying to measure something he couldn't see. Because for the first time in his own dining room, he realized he might not be the one controlling how this night ends. And I still hadn't told him the part that would matter most. My name is Nathan Cross. And this is the story of the night my wife's family tried to erase me, without realizing I was the only person who had been quietly holding them together. They didn't yell. They didn't fight. They didn't even look guilty. They just stopped including me. I noticed it first at the dinner table. 6 plates set. 5 chairs filled. Mine stayed empty. No one called my name. No one asked where I was. My wife, Elena, kept her eyes on her phone like she was waiting for a message that mattered more than the man who paid for the house she was sitting in. Then her brother cleared his throat and said, "So are we all agreed?" agreed on what? Elena nodded. Her mother reached into a folder. Her father didn't even pretend to hesitate. And that's when I saw my name typed printed. Already crossed out. They weren't arguing about whether I should be part of the family. They were discussing how to move forward, as if I'd already disappeared. I stayed in the hallway, silent. Listening. Once the transfer goes through, her father said. We won't need him anymore. Her brother laughed. We never really did. Elena didn't laugh. She just signed the paper. That was the moment everything inside me went still. Not angry. Not shocked. Just clear. Because what they didn't know, what none of them had ever bothered to notice, was that every bill they paid on time, every deal that didn't collapse, every quiet crisis that somehow fixed itself overnight, that was me. The extra son-in-law. The quiet one. The one they thought was replaceable. I stepped into the dining room. 6 chairs. 6 faces turning toward me like they'd seen a ghost. Elena's pen froze mid-signature. Her mother's smile cracked first. Her brother looked annoyed, like I'd interrupted a meeting I wasn't invited to. Her father folded the paper slowly. Nathan, he said carefully, we were just planning my exit. I finished. Silence. No one denied it. Elena finally spoke. You weren't supposed to be home yet. Not your misunderstanding. Not let's talk. Just wrong timing. I nodded once. Good, I said. Then this should be quick. I walked to the table, picked up the folder, and flipped through it. Property transfers, account changes, business restructuring, all designed to cut me out cleanly, neat, efficient, permanent. They really thought they'd planned everything. What they didn't realize was that 12 hours earlier, I'd already seen their plan. And I'd already made a small adjustment of my own. I set the folder down. You should finish signing, I told Elena calmly. You're going to want those documents complete before midnight. Her father frowned. Why midnight? I checked my watch. Because at 12:01, every system they depended on, every account they controlled, every safety net they assumed was theirs, was about to remind them who had actually been holding this family together. And for the first time that night, I smiled. They thought they were erasing me quietly. They didn't realize the moment the clock hit midnight, the entire foundation under their feet would vanish with me. 11:58 p.m. Elena's father tried to keep his voice steady. Nathan, stop being dramatic. Whatever you think you did for this family. The lights flickered. Just once. Then the house went dark. Not a blackout. The emergency strips along the floor came on immediately, soft white lines I'd installed 2 years ago after their last financial scare. Her brother laughed nervously. Real funny. I checked my watch again. 11:59. Then Elena's phone buzzed once, twice. Then again, rapid, panicked notifications stacking over each other. She looked down. Her face changed first. What? She whispered. Her father's phone followed. Then her mother's tablet. Then the wall screen in the dining room lit up with a system alert none of them had ever seen before. Access revoked. Primary admin, and cross. Transfer complete. Her father grabbed his glasses. That's not possible. It was. Every account they'd moved money into, frozen pending verification. Every business credential they'd shifted out of my name, flagged for audit. Every automated payment system I'd quietly maintained for years, disabled at midnight. Not stolen, not destroyed, just paused, held in the hands of the one person they tried to erase. Elena stood slowly. You locked us out. I shook my head. No. I stepped away. Her brother slammed his phone on the table. You can't do this. That company runs on those systems. I met his eyes. Exactly. Silence spread through the room like a crack in glass. Her mother tried a softer approach. Nathan, sweetheart, let's not make emotional decisions. You already did, I said gently. Elena finally looked at me, really looked. Not annoyed, not distracted, afraid, because for the first time, she understood something simple. They hadn't been holding me in the family. I'd been holding the family together. Her father straightened, trying to recover control. We'll call the bank. The lawyers. This won't stand. I nodded toward the screen. You can call anyone you want. But until the primary administrator restores access, I let the sentence hang. He swallowed. I didn't answer. Instead, I pulled out a chair, the one that had been left empty earlier, and sat down at the table. My seat finally occupied. I'm not here to ruin you, I said calmly. If I were, you'd already be ruined. Elena's voice was quiet. What do you want? That question hung heavier than anything else that night. Because this wasn't about revenge. Not really. It was about truth. I want to know, I said, looking directly at her, at what exact point you all decided I was disposable, while still depending on everything I built. No one spoke. Not her father, not her brother. Elena's eyes filled slowly, but she didn't cry, because she knew she'd signed the paper, and now every signature in that room suddenly felt fragile. I stood. You can keep the house, I said, the cars, the business name, all of it. Relief flickered across her brother's face. Then I finished the sentence. But you don't get to keep the systems that make it all run. The relief died instantly. Elena stepped forward. Nathan, if you walk away, everything collapses. I gave a small, tired smile. Funny, I said. That's exactly what you were counting on me doing. I headed for the door. No one tried to stop me this time. Because for the first time, they understood something terrifying. If I left quietly, they'd have nothing to fight, nothing to blame, nothing to fix. Just the slow realization that the person they tried to erase was the only reason none of them had fallen apart already. My hand paused on the doorknob. Behind me, Elena's voice cracked. Is there any way to undo this? I didn't turn around. Yes, I said. There was. I opened the door. Cold night air rushed in. But that option, I added softly, expired the moment you signed. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. Inside, the emergency lights still glowed, phones still buzzed, systems still locked, and for the first time in years, everything they relied on was silent. By morning, they wouldn't just be locked out of their accounts. They'd discover the one thing I never told them, and why walking away was only the beginning. I didn't go far. Just to the end of the street. Far enough to see the house. Close enough to watch the lights flicker as backup systems failed one by one. My phone buzzed at 12:17 a.m. A no number. I let it ring. Then another call. Then Elena. I answered on the fourth attempt. Her voice was tight. There are people here. I know, I said. Silence. How do you know? She asked. Because they don't move unless I tell them to. That landed. The night guard at their office building had already locked the main server room. The financial controller had received the automated notice I'd scheduled months ago. The legal compliance alert had gone out to every partner tied to the family business. Not accusations, not scandals. Just one simple message: primary operator has withdrawn. All dependent systems paused pending review. Nothing illegal, nothing dramatic, just truth. delivered all at once. Elena exhaled shakily. You planned this? No, I said. I prepared for it. A long pause stretched between us. Then she asked the question she'd been avoiding since dinner. If we hadn't tried to cut you out tonight, would you ever have told us? I looked back at the house. At the windows. At the life I'd quietly maintained for years without anyone noticing how much weight it took. Probably not, I admitted. Because that was the part they never understood. I didn't build everything so they'd owe me. I built it so things wouldn't fall apart. But the moment they decided I was unnecessary, they also decided they could handle the collapse without me. Elena's voice dropped to almost a whisper. What happens now, I said. Now you find out what the family looks like without the person you erased. Her breath hitched. Nathan, but there was nothing left to argue about. No shouting. No threats. Just consequences arriving exactly on schedule. I ended the call gently and turned off my phone. For the first time in years, the silence felt earned. Across the street, the front door opened. Her father stepped out first. Then her brother. Then Elena. They stood on the porch like people who'd just realized the ground under their house wasn't as solid as they thought. I didn't wave. Didn't speak. I just watched, because sometimes the loudest thing you can do is nothing at all. I got into my car and started the engine as I pulled away. One final notification appeared on the dashboard screen. System transition complete, independent. Control active, not revenge, not destruction, just separation, clean, quiet, final. And somewhere behind me, in a house that suddenly felt much bigger than it had an hour ago, they were finally beginning to understand what it meant to lose the person who'd been quietly holding everything together. By sunrise, they'd try one last move to pull me back in. They wouldn't realize I'd already left them with a choice that would cost far more than money. 7:02 a.m. My phone turned back on by itself when I started the car. 36 missed calls. 12 voicemails. 3 messages marked urgent. I listened to the last one first. Elena. We can fix this, she said, voice raw from a night without sleep. Just come to the office, please, before everyone else gets here. I didn't answer. I just drove. The office building looked the same as it always had, glass, steel, quiet confidence, but inside. Panic moved faster than any rumor. The receptionist straightened when she saw me, not relieved. Not surprised. Just steady. Good morning, Mr. Cross, she said like nothing had changed. That was the thing about foundations. When they crack, the building still looks fine, right up until the moment it doesn't. Elena was waiting in the conference room. Alone. No father. No brother. No legal team, just her. You came, she said softly. I said I might, I replied. She slid a folder across the table. Not the same one from last night. This one was thinner, cleaner. I tore up the transfer, she said, all of it. I didn't touch the folder. That doesn't restore anything, I said calmly. I know. Her eyes held mine. That's not why I did it. Silence settled between us. Then she said the one thing I hadn't expected. They're not asking you to come back. That got my attention. They're asking what it would take for you to stay gone without everything collapsing, honest. Finally, I leaned back in the chair. And what do you want, Elena? Her answer took longer. Last night, she said quietly, when you walked out, the house didn't just lose power. It lost direction. Everyone kept looking at each other like someone else would fix it. She swallowed. You were never just helping us. You were anchoring us. I let that sit. Because apologies are easy in the dark. Clarity only counts in daylight. So here's the choice, I said. I opened the folder myself this time and placed a single page on the table. Not a contract. Not a demand. A separation plan. Clean divisions. Independent systems. A timeline that let their business survive without me ever stepping back into the role they'd taken for granted. You get stability, I said. You get time to rebuild properly. You get to stand on your own without pretending I'm invisible. Elena read the page slowly. And you, she asked. I get my life back, I said simply. No anger. No bitterness. Just truth. Tears filled her eyes but didn't fall. Was there ever a version where this ended differently? She asked. Yes, I said. She waited. Before the signatures, I added, that was the cost, not money. Not controlled timing, she nodded once, like someone accepting gravity. Outside the glass walls. Employees were arriving, checking systems, noticing the changes. The world hadn't ended, it had just shifted. Elena signed the separation page without looking away from me. Not as my wife. Not as my opponent. Just as someone who finally understood what had been holding everything together. I stood. So this is it, she asked. This is it, I said. I walked to the door. This time, no one tried to erase me. No one tried to stop me. Because now they knew, losing me wasn't the disaster. Realizing they'd needed me all along, and only understood it once I was gone. That was the part that would stay with them. I stepped into the hallway. The systems behind me began transitioning smoothly into the structure I'd left them. No collapse. No chaos. Just consequences, handled with the same quiet precision I'd always used. And for the first time in years, I wasn't holding anyone up. They tried to erase me in one night. What they didn't realize was that walking away didn't destroy their family. It just revealed who they were once the person holding them together finally let go. A week passed. No dramatic collapse. No public scandal. No fiery confrontations. Just silence. The kind that forces people to hear themselves think. I moved into a small apartment across the city. Nothing fancy. Nothing tied to anyone else. For the first time in years, every system I touched belonged only to me. On Monday morning, I got the update. Their company was still running, barely but running. They'd followed the transition plan exactly, careful, cautious, independent. That mattered not because I wanted them to succeed, but because for the first time, they weren't succeeding through me. They were doing it on their own. My phone buzzed once that afternoon. A message from Elena. Not a call. Not a plea. Just a photo. The dining table at the house. 6 chairs. All filled. My seat still there. But this time, it wasn't empty. Her father sat in it. Not as a replacement. Not as a statement. As a reminder. A second message followed. We didn't realize how quiet everything would feel without you managing the noise. We're learning, slowly. Thank you for not letting us collapse when you had every reason to. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I typed back a single sentence. That was always the point. No anger, no reunion, just distance. With understanding, weeks turned into months. The systems I'd built for myself expanded faster than anything I'd ever done for them. Cleaner decisions, clearer boundaries. No one assuming I'd quietly fix things behind the scenes. One evening, I passed the old house by accident. Lights on. Voices inside. Laughter uneven but real. They were still a family. just not one that relied on me to hold the structure together. And that was the twist no one saw coming. I didn't leave to make them fall apart. I left so they'd finally learn how not to. I kept walking. No dramatic ending. No final confrontation. Just a man who'd been erased once, and chose not to return to a place that only valued him when he was invisible. Because sometimes the strongest move isn't revenge. It's stepping back far enough for everyone to see what your presence was actually worth. And once they do, you don't need to go back. You just need to keep going. 3 months later, I stopped checking on them. Not out of bitterness. Out of balance. The systems I'd built for my own life were finally running without interruption. No late night fixes for someone else's crisis. No quiet patches over someone else's mistakes. Just clean, predictable momentum. Then one afternoon, a courier showed up at my office. No return address, just a small envelope with my name typed neatly across the front. Inside was a single key, not to the house, not to any office I recognized, and a note, in Eleanor's handwriting: "We finished rebuilding without you. You were right, we needed to learn how. This isn't a request for you to come back. It's just closure. Use it if you ever want to see what changed." I turned the key over in my hand for a long time. It wasn't heavy. Didn't look important. But I knew better. A week later, curiosity won. The address led to a smaller building across town, one of the company's old satellite spaces. The place they'd never paid much attention to when I was around because I'd always kept it quietly functiona. Now the sign out front had changed. New name. New structure. No trace of the old hierarchy that revolved around me. Inside, the systems were running simpler, slower, but stable. A team that looked tired but focused. People who knew exactly what they were responsible for because no one else was silently covering for them anymore. Elena met me in the lobby. No dramatic reunion. No tension. Just a nod. A small steady smile. "We didn't rebuild it the way you would have," she said. "But we rebuilt it in a way we understand." I glanced around. It wasn't perfect. But it was theirs. "That's all it ever needed to be," I said. She handed me a folder thin, like the one from that last morning months ago. "Financial separation finalized," she explained. "Everything clean. No ties left." I signed where I needed to. No hesitation. When I handed the pen back, she didn't reach for it right away. "Do you ever regret leaving?" she asked quietly. I thought about it. About the night at the dining table. The empty chair. The signatures. "No," I said. "I regret that it took being erased for me to realize I should be walked away sooner." She nodded like she'd expected that. We walked toward the exit together, then stopped at the door. "This is probably the last time we'll do this," she said. "Probably," I agreed. No promises to stay in touch. No dramatic goodbye. Just to people who finally understood the real twist of the story. They hadn't tried to erase me because I was weak. They tried because they thought I was permanent. And I'd left not to make them suffer, but to make sure none of us stayed stuck in a role we'd outgrown. Outside, the air felt lighter, the kind of lightness that only comes after something fully ends instead of lingering half alive. I walked to my car, the same way I had that night months ago. But this time, there was no emergency system waiting to switch over. No foundation tied to anyone else. Just my own life, running on systems I chose to maintain, and somewhere across the city, a family that once tried to erase me was still standing, not because I went back, but because I left them with the one thing they'd never had before, the ability to stand without me. And that's where it ends. Not with a reunion. Not with revenge. Not with anyone begging for another chance. Just distance. Understanding. And a quiet kind of closure that only comes when the noise finally stops. They rebuilt their lives without me. I rebuilt mine without them. No one collapsed. No one won. But everyone learned exactly what my presence had been worth, not when I was there, but when I wasn't. The chair at their table eventually stopped feeling empty. The systems I once ran stopped needing my name attached to them. And the version of me who stayed invisible just to keep everything together, he stopped existing too. I didn't disappear that night. I stepped out of a role that was never meant to last forever. And once I did, something unexpected happened. Nothing chased me. Nothing dragged me back. Nothing needed fixing. For the first time in years, everything kept moving, without me holding it up. So this isn't a story about a man who was erased. It's about a man who realized that sometimes the strongest thing you can do, the cleanest ending you can choose, is to walk away quietly and never need to return.